So just to remind ourselves, all the blue tracks here on this arrangement are the chordal instruments. These are the pluck chords, the transynth, the piano, the melodies, and these are all going to bus D, which is this right here. And we have a lot of stuff going on there. First of all, we're saturating all the channels together with the decapitator. We're using the Burnley 73 just to boost up some of the lows and a little bit of the highs. We're using parallel compression with the Lindell 254E. We're using a stereo room to push them back in the mix just a tad. BX control to make them wider. And then lastly, EQ to clean up the low end. So we'll deactivate all these plugins and then bring them in one at a time. And for this, we're just going to solo bus D and play it from the chorus. On the decapitator, the first thing that I like to do is hit the punish button and then adjust the dry wet mix. We're cutting the lows around 147 Hertz. Next up, we're using the Burnley EQ to boost up 220. This is going to give us back that body and enhance a little bit of the high shelf here. So again, just makes the track sound a little bit more exciting. This is kind of like doing a bass boost and a treble boost. Okay, next up is using parallel compression with the Lindell 254E. So similar as we did with the decapitator where we used the mix knob, we're going to use the Lindell compressor here with the mix knob as well. And the mix is set really, really low. The reason for that is because I'm cranking the input up, bringing the threshold all the way down, and using the fastest release time. So this is a really heavily working compression. Again, a small amount, but it's just enough. Okay, next up, we're using a reverb on this track. And this applies to, again, all the instruments going to this bus. And the reason we're using a 2016 stereo room is because we're pushing the synths back just a little bit so that they don't sound so dry. And for this, we're only using 4%. Let me go ahead and increase that so you guys can actually hear what's going on. So that's the early reflections of this reverb. But we're only dialing in 4% of that into the mix. With this position knob, you can dial in if you want this moved closer to the listener or further back to the rear. So we have that set at 20%. So really what we're doing is we're using the eventide as a early reflection reverb. Okay, next up is the BX Control V2, and I love using this plugin. This is a utility plugin. It's not an EQ, but what it does, it allows you to control the stereo width. So it allows us to take all the chordal instruments and make them wider. And it also allows us to make anything below this value, which is 416 Hertz, to be mono. Let's check it out. Okay, and then lastly, we're using the Pro EQ to turn down some of the sub lows. Let's check that out with the whole track. And just to remind ourselves, we're sending bus D with this aux send to the main melody, feeding into the external sidechain of this gate to ensure that the melody is always louder than the chords. Cool, so I hope you guys were able to learn and pick up some things here that you can use inside of your own mixes. In the next section, we'll take a look at the risers and effects.